Violence broke out over the weekend between the Israelis and the Palestinians, specifically in the Gaza Strip. Now, according to reports, at least 22 Palestinians, including militants and children, were killed in Gaza over the weekend, and 4 Israeli civilians died in the fighting. CBS News has more details on this story. Let's take a look.
Israel's military struck back, hitting about 350 targets in the Gaza Strip. One of those Palestinian targets had been riding in this car. Israel's military says it was a senior Hamas figure. It was the first targeted assassination by Israel since 2014. Palestinians say an infant was also killed in one of the airstrikes. Her body was carried in a funeral procession. Her father said the children were playing and were struck by a missile shot from a drone.
So Israel is claiming that their actions were their retaliation against Hamas, that Hamas had initially launched airstrikes against the Israelis, and they were essentially reacting to that. And of course, as we've seen in previous cases, their reaction is usually pretty disproportionate. They have more in terms of military capability, and they have more in terms of defense capability. But nonetheless, lives have been lost, and they have reached a ceasefire, but the ceasefire is, I think, vulnerable. I think that any little provocation on either side will lead to more violence. But I'll give you more details on that in just a minute. Maytha, jump in, give me some details on all this.
Well, I think people have to remember, because there's always this obsession about who started what at what point. Did Hamas launch rockets? Did Israelis start? There was always a Hamas provocation. People have to remember that the blockade started in 2007, and what the blockade is. The blockade is blocking out people in an open air prison where they can't come in and out. Even their water sources, where they go fish for their food, there's a certain distance they can go, and then they'll be shot by the Israeli military. So they are in an incredibly dehumanizing, vulnerable situation where their food rations are also determined in terms of what comes in and out. There's massive unemployment. So they have very little recourse to shift and change what's going on in their lives. And I guess at certain points there are rocket launches, but there's, like you said, Anna, a history of disproportionate violence, because you're talking about a nation state's military versus a violent organization within the country, within Gaza. I mean, I just want to give you some updates. You were talking about 24 people were killed on the Palestinian side, 4 Israelis, and that includes 2 pregnant Palestinian women and the 15-month-old that you saw. But also, if we go back, the report mentioned 2014, there were 2,104 Palestinians that were killed, 495 children, 72 Israelis, and you keep on going back 2012, 2009, and you see that same kind of disparity in terms of lives lost. So you have to ask yourself, what is different between the two sides, and how can that help us move forward on a path towards peace? And usually it's not that the side that has the least amount of military-grade equipment has the burden of doing the most restraint. It's usually the one that is carrying.
Right, and also I think that it's important to put yourself in the shoes of people living in the Gaza Strip who are dealing with the ramifications of that blockade. So it's easy to say, well, Hamas struck first and they get what they deserve, which, and I'm not trying to say this to excuse what Hamas did, but you have to understand the motivations behind what they did. Because if you create a situation in which a group of people are desperate and they feel like they have no other choice, well, of course they're gonna act out in the ways that we've seen. And instead of thinking about, hey, this is a symptom of an issue that we need to find a solution for, Benjamin Netanyahu's reaction has been to be even more brutal and more cruel toward the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza.
And I think the other thing that you have to realize is they're in a blockade, and people assume that people are in a territory that they are from. 70% of the people in Gaza are refugees from other parts of what is quote unquote Israel, right? And so they are being cut off from their family members. They're cut off from where they are from, and like you were saying, cut off from the rest of the world, including food sources. So you have to imagine this is like a prison uprising, right? Prison uprisings can be violent, but they come from somewhere. They come from certain kinds of conditions that people are living through.
Yeah, I mean, the whole situation is unbelievably depressing. I mean, there was just the elections in Israel very recently, and it was, Netanyahu won again, but the election choice was basically between, the extreme right-wing Netanyahu and Benny Gantz, who also supported the occupation, is not really calling for a two-state solution or anything like that, which was the sort of mainstream position throughout my whole life.
Right.
And now the de facto conditions on the ground make it seem like the two-state solution is a pipe dream. Like they've created the conditions where that just can't happen at this point.
Exactly, and that cycle of violence will only continue unless there is, at least a consideration to change course by the Israeli government. And what Netanyahu and the Israeli government is doing right now is putting the lives of Israelis, of Israeli citizens, in danger. Understand that. He is doing that. If he genuinely cares about the lives of Israelis, he would, first of all, at least consider changing course and consider how his actions are leading to these uprisings that we're seeing by Palestinians. But of course, he's not interested in doing any of that. Let me just quickly talk about the ceasefire. According to Arab news reports, a new ceasefire was brokered by Egypt and the United Nations. This is being reported by the New York Times, and it includes measures to ease the acute economic crisis in the impoverished Gaza Strip. And I want to give the New York Times a little bit of credit because they're finally at least mentioning the fact that there are serious economic issues that the Palestinians are facing. Also, one other note that I wanted to mention was that there's concern that Benjamin Netanyahu is not really taking the ceasefire seriously. So first, Hamas said that they agreed to the ceasefire. Arab news reports included news that there was an agreement about the ceasefire, but there was no statement from the Israeli government for a while. And then finally, when Netanyahu did release a statement, it appeared that he was, let me give you the exact wording. He said the campaign is not over, meaning the campaign to retaliate against the Palestinians in Gaza, and it demands patience and sagacity. We are prepared to continue. The goal has been and remains ensuring quiet and security for the residents of the South, meaning Israel. I send condolences to the families and best wishes for recovery to the wounded. So even in that statement, he is threatening more acts of violence against the Palestinians. And this is again after the ceasefire had been reached.
He's campaigned on annexing the West Bank. So, I mean, you could say that he was going extreme right to capture a certain voting bloc, but he did tell us his intentions, and annexing an area that Palestinians are living on means that he is down for more violence. So it's clear that peace is not what he is concerned with. And I think also a lot of, especially American Jews who are progressive, know that and have been starting to seriously question the relationship between Netanyahu and Trump and their own, the way that they look at Israel and what Israel's been doing to Palestinians because of that tight-knit relationship. And Trump responded very quickly, stating his support for Netanyahu.
Of course.
I don't know if we have the quote, but it's pretty obvious.
But I think that that's an important factor because you mentioned maybe the Israeli government has to change tack or whatever. They simply won't unless there's pressure from the American government.
And there never will be pressure from the American
government.
From
this current regime, at least. Yeah, maybe. Maybe a future president, Bernie Sanders, might do something, but.
Right, but let me just be clear about one thing. Unless we get money out of politics, nothing will ever change in terms of the US response to the Israeli government if we have a right-wing Israeli government, as is the case right now. And the reason why I say that is because look at Obama. Even Obama, during his administration, tried to criticize the settlements that were being built in the West Bank.
And John Kerry.
And John Kerry. And think about
and they had a revolt from their own party in Congress. And,
Thank you. So they did not get the support from their own party. And you have to look at what the influences are behind the scenes. And it's important to bring that up. It impacts every single foreign policy issue that our government is involved in. And Israel is no different from that.
Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.